Hi there, my name is Jorge Coxaj, and I'm the founder of Rescue Love Ministry. Today, I want to talk to you a message from the book of John, chapter 9. So, if you want to join me, John chapter 9, verses 1 through 5, they read the following. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now, this powerful story is very fitting for John. And I want to tell you about what it means for us as men and what it means for our lives. But first, I want to share with you a story of something that happened to me recently. I was having a conversation with a friend who was having a very hard time with their job. Now, they were talking to me because they were considering leaving their job. They were convinced that they were going to quit because this job was no good anymore, and they were sick and tired of the place, and they were sick and tired of everyone, and they didn't like the way the people smelled or the way that they dotted their I's or crossed their T's. Everything was bothering them about these people at work, their boss, their coworkers, the hours that they had to work, the shift that they had to work. Everything bothered them about their job. And the reason for that was numerous. There were many reasons for it. So I'm talking to this person, and as we're having the conversation, I remembered that we had had this conversation several times before. We had had this very same conversation on more than one occasion about the last job that they had. And I remember having that conversation about the previous to that job that they had. So we had had this conversation almost monthly. You could practically set a clock to it of how often and how definite it was that we were going to have this talk. Why? Because they would get sick and tired of the job, whatever job it was, whatever it was that they were doing. They would grow sick and tired of it after a few weeks, or in some cases a few days. So it dawned on me that perhaps the job wasn't the problem. Perhaps the problem with this person was actually them. Maybe they were the problem. And so as I began to ruminate this idea, because you can't just tell somebody, I think you're the problem. You have to work it into the conversation in some way. So I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to this person so that they don't get offended, but so that they understand maybe what you're doing is what's affecting you. And I remember hearing this phrase, which has stuck with me to this day. If you want to fix the problems of the world, make sure that you fix yourself first. And it stuck with me because it basically means if I have the wisdom and the sight and the power to fix the problems that everyone else has, maybe I can use that wisdom and sight and power to fix my own problems. Maybe I should start with me. And then once I've worked on me, I can then work to help other people. So I looked at this friend and I said, is it possible that there's something in your job that you're doing that you could do better? And just that question got them to think. And they thought about it and they thought about it and they came back and said, well, you know what? It would probably be better if I got to work on time more often. And I said, yeah, that would probably be better. Your boss would probably hate you less or tolerate you more, however you want to look at it, if you were to show up to work on time. And they said, yeah, it would also probably be good if while I was at work, I didn't get into an argument with someone every day. And I said, yeah, that's probably a good thing. You could probably benefit not just yourself, but also benefit your fellow coworkers, your boss, and even the people that come to the store, by you having a better attitude and not getting into an argument with somebody. The point is that after some time of talking and diving deeper and asking questions, it turned out that there was a lot of things that they could have done to improve their situation. There was a lot of things that they could have done that would have changed their day-to-day at work. They were contributing to the problem more than they realized. And understanding their contribution to the problem was part of the solution. Because once they understood what they were doing wrong, then they were able to work on the things that they could control, which were the parts that pertained to them. So in this case, once this person began to work on the issue that pertained to them, or to work on the components of the issue that pertained to them, then they were able to have a better time at work. The concept is so simple, and yet it's so difficult sometimes and so profound in truth, because, I've counseled so many couples that when we sit down and they sit at my desk for marital counseling, it's very rare that I find where the person says, you know what, the biggest problem in this marriage is my part of the problem. It's my this or my that. No, what I see much more often, is that two people will sit in front of my desk and will go on for hours about how the other person is at fault for not just their marriage, but for all the problems in the world. And that seems to be the default. It seems to be that it's easier for us to criticize and judge and point the finger at someone else and point out all of the things that they have to fix and all of the things that they do wrong and all of the mistakes that they bring to the table. It's so much easier to point at them and to criticize them than it is to A, acknowledge the issues that I have, and B, which is even more scary, fix the issues that I have. And those same people I sit down and talk to will tell you once an issue does surface where they're responsible for a particular thing, and then they'll look at me or they'll sit there with their spouse and they'll say, well, that's so difficult to do. It's so difficult to change. And, in those situations, I simply say, well, imagine how much more difficult it is to change someone else. If you're having a hard time changing something within yourself, imagine how impossible it is to change something in someone else. So the easiest thing for you to do, and by easy, I don't mean by far that in any way it is easy, because working on yourself is absolutely challenging. But the easier thing to do when compared to the other option is to work on yourself. So why do we avoid this sometimes? Why does it make us uncomfortable to dive into the depths of our own brokenness, the fault that we carry, and the problems that we bring to the world? If we have the eyes to be able to see the issues and the problems of someone else, and we have that sight, that depth of sight and that scrutiny and that knowledge, then perhaps we should start by looking at ourselves. And so John is speaking to this through this story. And I want you to focus on the language that we have here in John chapter 9, because the first things that the disciples want to know is their question. They ask Jesus, well, who sinned? Whose fault is it that this man is blind? Because the consensus was that if a person had an infirmity, a debilitating infirmity like blindness, especially at this day and age, not in our day, of course, because there are so many more advances, but in this day and age, if the person is struggling with blindness, then it must have been someone's fault, because God wouldn't allow their children to go through something like that, or his children to go through something like that. And it kind of makes you think of the way that people approach God even today, where we conclude that if people are well off, or if they're doing well, or if they're wealthy, or if, they have honor or prestige or power or position, our assumption is that they must be blessed by God, and that if they don't have those things, then God must be upset with them. And you hear it in the language that people use that when referring to these kind of things. But what if these things just happen because we live in a broken world, and these things come, they are part and parcel to our experience here in this world? And so what Jesus says is, God didn't produce this, but God will be glorified through it, because God takes things that are broken and he makes them whole. He makes them new. And so Jesus then goes on to heal this man in a very fascinating way. The Bible tells us that he goes down to the dirt and he spits in the dirt and makes mud with his fingers, and then takes the mud and puts it on the eyes of this man who is blind. After which the man is able to see again. Now, the fascinating thing about this is that it is strangely reminiscent to the creation story. There is a direct link to the fact that when God created man, he knelt down, he formed man out of the mud, he made a person, and then he breathed life into them. Now, why would this even be a thing? Like, why would this be a factor, and why would it be important for us? It's important because it's an obvious reference to resurrection. This man was dead, but Jesus remade his life. He brought him back to life. He not just gave him his sight, he gave him back his life. And that's the powerful thing. With Jesus, there is no death. Even when you die, you have life, because in him there is resurrection. So Jesus takes this man who was dead and brings him back to life. Now, why is that significant, and why is it hopeful? It's hopeful and significant because of what Jesus says. He says it's important for us to do the work that we're doing while it is day. And then he clarifies in verse 5, if you paid attention, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. This is Jesus speaking. Now, what is the purpose of the light? Because if the light is just my little light to shine and to teach others the truth and to show them the errors of their ways, then why would Jesus say that it's important for him to work while it is day, and that while he's on earth, he is the light? Well, John has a lot of play with this idea, this concept of darkness and light. In fact, he introduces Jesus as light in John chapter 1 when he says that he was the light that came into the world. But John doesn't just say that he was light that came into the world. He says that the light that came into the world was rejected by the world because their deeds were in darkness. And that's fascinating, because if you think about it, what he's saying is light came in and shone in on people. But some people rejected light because what it showed exposed them to the point where they preferred to be covered by the darkness of mystery, of not confronting their own sin, of not confronting their own reality, rather than actually being exposed, transformed, and even resurrected by Jesus Christ. Now, he has this conversation with Nicodemus, and he says this to Nicodemus. He tells him that the men preferred darkness over the light because it exposed their deeds. To Nicodemus, he also told him it was important to be born again. Again, we see these connections of resurrection and light and darkness. You see, at the end of the chapter, the Pharisees, the Bible tells us, were against Jesus, so much so that they were able to see, but they finished the chapter blind, while the man who was born blind finishes the chapter being able to see through his experience with Jesus. And so we find this amazing result of light impacting a person. There could either be one result, which is the person is transformed, they experience resurrection, they are experiencing the power of God and healing in their life, or they are impacted by the light, but the light exposes their darkness and exposes the depth of the sin in the darkness and the things in their life, so they reject it, and instead they choose to remain blind. And so the question for us isn't who is this message for and who could benefit for this, but rather, am I being like the blind man who allowed the light to come in and heal me? Or am I being like the Pharisees who attacked Jesus and rejected the light because it was more comfortable to stay in the dark? And so, as men who are to leave a legacy, we need to be the kind of men that are comfortable with Jesus' light, not just shining on the world for all to see, but shining in the depths of my heart so that I may be exposed and transformed by his miraculous power and his healing. May God bless you. May you have a wonderful day, and may his light impact you and lead you to new life. God bless you. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you were blessed by the material. We also want to remind you that there are several great ways to make sure you're staying up to date on our content as part of our 360 Legacy Plan. First, subscribe to this channel by clicking subscribe below. You can also download our incredible new app in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. Just search Legacy Minded Men. And finally, visit our website at legacymindedmen.org for more information on what we believe, upcoming events, and how to join a group. Thanks again for watching.